All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Five, four, three, two, one. Welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host today, Julian Gill, admin on the FAQ message board, and I am joined by a special guest, David Donley. Good to meet you. We've known one another online for quite a few years, and for anyone who doesn't know you, why don't you just give them the 50,000-foot view of who are you?
Well, I'm a seasoned session musician, live and studio, and played with a lot of sort of artists much bigger than me, and so I've been touring the world for the last sort of 12 years or so. We'll talk about a single that I've got coming out soon, but I've done something of my own. I've basically been a sideman to many better known people than myself. But I'm obviously I'm a big Kiss fan. And a big record collector as well. I mean, I do have about 1,000 CDs upstairs, but we're sitting in my middle room, which is the room that I like. I've just said to Julian in the warm up that it's usually a lot darker in here, and I usually just play my records, my vinyl in here, and so all my Kiss books are in here, and all my Kiss records are in here. So this is my happy place. So, welcome to it.
So one of the things I've always told people on the show is that I want guests and friends on from all over the world. And Obviously it's many years since I lived in England and Britain, for that matter. So it's great to get someone on who is still residing on the Septic Isle, because my accent comes and goes, and as I have another beer, it'll probably come on a little bit stronger. But what I always like to do with a new guest is kind of introduce them to everyone else with their Kiss perspective, and what was the moment that you first experienced Kiss, because as a Brit it's going to be a little bit different probably than many people. So what was that first moment that drew your attention to them?
Well, it was it's a weird one, because I was about 11 years old, and my family moved from a city in a town in England called Northampton to a city in England called Norwich, which is where we are now. And I was about 11 years old, brand new place, all a bit scared. And my mother said to me, she said, "You should go and say hello to the lad next door called Bob. He's really into music, just like you." And because I was already playing, and I was really into bands like Sweet and stuff like that, and a bit of punk rock and stuff like that. But I went and met Bob, and Bob showed me his room upstairs, and the first thing I saw when I went in was one of those massive Kiss posters that they used to make, the really big ones, and it was like a sort of a live 1977 montage poster type thing, and I just pointed at it and just said, "Who's that?" It's like, "What is that?" And he pulled out a Live 2, and I just remember staring at the cover with Gene with the blood, and because Gene's never ever looked like that ever again, did he? Really? There's something about that face. But it just looked incredible, and the fire in the middle of it, in the center gatefold, and so he put it on, and that was it. I was there. But the strangest thing is that the first Kiss album that I owned was this lad Bob. He went to Canada for a holiday with his family, and he came back with a Kiss album, and he came round to my house, and he said, I bought this Kiss album in Canada, and I don't like it. It doesn't sound very good at all. You can have it if you like." And he gave it to me, saying he didn't like it. And it was that.
Oh my goodness.
And he's right, it doesn't sound great, as in quality-wise, it's, obviously, because he was about, 12 years old or whatever as well, so he didn't really know. I didn't know what bootlegs were, he didn't know what bootlegs, he'd just see it, and it didn't look like anything that he'd got before. And then after that, my sister, bless her, went to America for a holiday, and I'd got the bug by this point, and she bought me this back.
Oh,
And it's an American dynasty. Sorry, dynasty. No,
Dynasty.
yeah.
We,
What do you say?
I still say I don't know. I flip between both. So yeah.
It's dynasty, though, isn't it?
They say Dynasty.
Like, dynasty. Well, see, dynasty is the TV series. I don't know. Anyway, so I have upgraded to things like this since, which is good. And I that was my start basically. And I think we've heard the story so many times on Kiss podcasts that basically from that point on it was every Christmas, every birthday. What would you like? Dressed to Kill, please. Hotter Than Hell, please. Alive One, please. That sort of thing. And I built up the collection of every Kiss album on vinyl, except for when they stopped with things like Carnival and Souls and stuff like that. But nowadays I get a real kick out of. I got this the other day. I saw this on one of the Wax episodes, which and it's the orange one, which I love, and also being British. I was very lucky to get these bad boys all in a row.
Oh, I loved those back in the day. Are those the colored vinyl or the black vinyl?
Coloured vinyl with the mask and everything. But the weird thing is, I've actually got. Do you know, Julian, why I might have two of these?
The misprint one and the regular one.
It's not misprint.
I don't know.
I'd say it's.
Tell me.
It's got Love in. One of them's got Love in Chains on the
yeah.
back,
Yeah,
and one's got.
the only copies I
Goodbye.
ever owned had Love and Chains on them. I never had one that had what's the B-side supposed to be? Goodbye.
Goodbye.
So I never found one that had Goodbye on it. So
Yeah,
back
yeah.
when I collected singles. But you were saying that you were into the suite, and what were kind of your entry points into music, artist-wise? I'm thinking early '70s, Slade and the Suite and whatnot, Gary Glitter and all that sort of thing. What were the bands that interested you, that really drew you into music before you even got into Kiss?
Well, it was basically, you have to sort of younger people don't quite understand the whole thing of programs like Top of the Pops that we had in England, which was basically if you missed it on a Thursday at 7 o'clock, that was it. You couldn't talk about it in the playground. And you guys, or maybe not you, Julian, but American people, it's the same with things like the Paul Lynde special or whatever, or Phantom of the Park. If you weren't there that night to watch it, you were stuffed. You didn't see it, and then you had to wait, and you had to hear everyone talking about it. So my entry point was programs like Top of the Pops. My dad, bless him, he's my late father now, sadly, but he was a jazz musician, and I wasn't really into the jazz thing because I discovered the drum kit in the basement at about age 5, and the stuff that he was playing me sounded impossible, absolutely impossible. But when I started seeing, for want of a better term, pop bands, as it were, back in the day, although they are now, we see them as rock bands like The Sweet and Slade and what have you, I suddenly realised that with my record player next to my little drum kit, I could play along to these things, and Queen and all sorts of stuff. And the same. And when punk happened, I suddenly realised that all this time, where I just thought I have to be a drummer because that's what I am, I always fancied playing guitar. But I started getting into things like, Dave Gilmour and things like that. Whereas again, it's unobtainable, isn't it? And then good old Pistols came along, and the Buzzcocks and the Clash and what have you. And all of a sudden, as long as I could play a power chord, I could work out how they all went. And so for me, a very, very sort of quick summing up would be listening to my dad's jazz stuff, and then Top of the Pops with the glam stuff. So I discovered all the glam stuff, punk rock, and then, like I say, 1978 discovered Kiss. And again, nothing against Peter Criss, but there's not a great deal that he does that I can't do, as it were. Do you know what I mean? It's like I could play along to Kiss albums. And that's that, and then I just but I've always just loved so much different types of stuff, but my two favorite bands are the Sex Pistols and Kiss, and I find it quite odd that I've got at least 4 friends that's the same for as well.
Yeah, there are quite a few of us actually, because obviously we've talked a little about the Pistols and whatnot.
Yeah.
That they're pretty high up on my list of bands. When I put on my guitar, there's a natural inclination when I'm warming up just to rip through something like Pretty Vacant. just very basic guitar that brings you back to the adage that it's not how many notes you play, it's how you play the notes that you
Absolutely.
play. So
Absolutely.
it's a very simple song, but
Yeah.
it's a perfect song in many ways. So we'll talk probably a little bit about the Pistols
Yeah.
in a few minutes and whatnot.
Well, I was never into the sort of safety pins through the ears and the coloured air and all that sort of stuff. It was the music. It was that wall of guitar sound, that I just thought, whoa, that sounded amazing. It was bigger than Sweet. It was bigger than Slade. It was just this wall. I mean, maybe Chris Thomas as a producer is the person that got me into the Pistols. Who knows, But it was that wall of sound. The first time I got played a Pistols record, it was a bit of a road to Damascus moment.
It certainly was for me because once I picked up Nevermind the Bollocks, and then I went back to the singles and to the
Mm.
bootlegs and Spunk in particular,
Yeah,
which is the version I listen to rather than anything else. And suddenly you discover that there's a wall of sound there, but there's also a deadly backbeat
yeah,
between Cookie and
absolutely.
Glenn, and they're really holding everything down. And Steve, I mean,
Yeah,
is he ever going to compete with some of the flashy guitar players that come along later, or Brian May, or
doesn't matter.
Ken Downing, or Glenn Tipton? No, it's what he's doing with what his tools are, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and obviously John's lyrics on top of all
yeah.
of that brings the whole package together for me. So, it became a real adventure into a whole different sort of music as
And
I started to dig into these bands. Clash never did anything for me past the second
I wasn't
album.
a big fan, but later on, I sort of, I discovered them. Well, not discovered them, but I got into them a lot later, a bit more sort of thing. But I tell you this, we're obviously going to talk about Glenn and stuff later and what have you. But I did last year. I actually got asked if I would drum tech for Paul Cook, the drummer for the Pistols. And I tell you, to be hidden from the crowd, I had to crouch behind the bass amp, and I was literally about 3 feet. My nose was 3 feet from his hi-hat. And just watching the way he played and the foot and everything, and it was with the band Professionals that he plays in, but they do songs like Silly Thing and what have you, and but it's just watching him, this guy that you know, I don't want to say idolize because I've never been very starstruck. I just think, people are either great musicians or they're not. I don't get wobbly at meeting anyone. But to sit there behind a bass amp looking at Paul Cook's actual playing was pretty cool. It was pretty special. And what you were saying about it's not how many notes and all that sort of stuff, I think without wanting to start a great big bun fight about it, that is the difference between Ace Frehley and Tommy Thayer. I'm sorry. Tommy's an amazing player technically. He plays it right every single time. But the thing I loved about Ace is the fact that it could fall to bits at any minute. And I love raw, dangerous rock and roll.
Yeah,
And
Ace is always teetering on the brink of an
yeah,
absolute disaster. You don't
yeah,
know if
yeah,
he's going to finish the song standing up or falling over,
yeah.
where the wheels are going to fall off. But again, it's down to that thing that you really can't quantify in music, the feel.
It's
The
sleazy rock and roll. Sleazy rock and roll. That's what it is. Same with Peter Criss. There's several videos of Peter Criss where he does a drum fill where I'm absolutely convinced he's not going to make it round the kit, and he does. It's just because he's well, whatever. He might be under the influence of, but there are certain gigs where you can just tell is he going to make it through? And that's what I liked about the original Kiss was that it was dirty, raw rock and roll.
So, as everyone listening can figure, we're going to be all over the board today with what we're talking about musically. We're going to talk some new stuff that David's worked on. We're going to be going back into the Kiss angle. Who knows? There's no
Yeah.
plan for where we're going on this, but I do want to talk about the new single that you've got out.
Thank
So let's get in and play a little bit of Side One Crashing Up off the new Venus Reaction single.
Do you think it's that easy? You'll never understand. Don't judge a book by its outside. This is the part I plan. You're always putting me down, but I'm always moving up.
I'm sorry, that makes me smile every time I listen to it.
Cheers, man.
I'm going to say I'm guilty of one thing, and that my immediate thought after listening to the single, and we'll play some of the B-side as well a little bit later, is I was thinking sonically the production reminded me very much of Paul Stanley's Live to Win album. That it's got everything I love about punk pop.
Yeah.
It's got hooks.
Yeah.
I love your vocalist.
Yes,
I think she does an absolutely brilliant job singing that. The changes in voice just come across perfectly. And, you know, I'm not going to stroke you, but I love the arrangement. I love the song. I think it's a really, really hooky, catchy song. And I'm bopping my head. I don't fake it. So
cheers. I'll take that because obviously, well, I don't know because I don't know whether you've actually got a copy yet, but it's I'm the producer, so I produced it.
Okay, well, very well done. But you also play guitar on that track, correct?
Yeah.
And
that's.
Again, it gets back to a little bit of what we were talking about with like a Steve Jones, is that you're not bombing a hell of a lot of notes. You're just playing the right stuff in the right place. And I don't want to go into, you know, a critique of your playing because I'm just not a good enough guitarist to go there. And it would just I'd be a real prat if I did. But, you know, it's fun. It makes me smile. And I do want to say, the purpose of this show is to get this single, you know, some more coverage out there. So I do hope that people will give the Venus Reaction a chance. Tell us about the single and where they can get it, number one, and listen to hopefully some samples.
Well, there's a Facebook page for a start, so go and find the Venus Reaction on Facebook. And there's lots of videos. There's the recording process. There's a sort of Q&A with Amy. And there's all sorts of bits and pieces on there. But what it is like I said to you at the beginning, I'm session guy playing with lots of different people, and kind of taking the Kiss model of wanting to have a band that you'd like to see, you know. But in their case, it was to see on stage. For me, it was what I'd like to hear, and I had a sort of wish list of who I wanted to do the single with, because I'd been drumming a lot. I'd been doing a lot of drumming, and I really wanted to get the guitar out again. And the first person I asked was Ed Graham from The Darkness, and I believe The Darkness are known in America, certainly, you know, for anyone who believes in a thing called love. Obviously, they that will ring true. And so I asked Ed, because when I was doing the demo, I was trying to play like Ed. I wanted that sort of solid boom crack thing, and we're friends, you know. But and I just said to him in the end, I said, "Would you play on something that I've got an idea for?" And he just said yes. And then myself and Amy had already met. I had done a session job I was playing guitar for a band called Sham 69. Do you know them?
I have heard of them.
Yes, yeah, if the United and all that sort of stuff. And I was doing these gigs with them, and Amy was actually the drummer in the support band, believe it or not, you know. And I was talking to her afterwards, and she was just saying, "Yeah, I want to sing though. Because I was saying you're a really good drummer, you know, double kick and everything, you know." And I said, she said to me, you know, "I really want to sing." And I said, "Well, send me something you've done, and I'd like to hear it," you know, just quite casually. And then she did send me a little demo that she'd done, and I thought that sounds like a voice that I wouldn't mind hearing on stuff. And so, you know, a little bit while later, when I was putting this together, I just thought, I'm going to ask Amy if she'll do it, and she said yes. And so then there was only really the bass position left, and I'd already put a bass down for it, and I've been the drummer on and off whenever he's needed me for Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols. Although that'll annoy him if he sees this, if I say Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols, because the thing I love about Glenn is that he does so much different stuff. He's an amazing bass player and a brilliant songwriter, and I've seen him play with the Faces, Primal Scream. You know, he's done a lot. He's done a lot. But yes, he got his big push initially with the Pistols, you know. But it's his bass style. He plays with his fingers. You know, I play with a plectrum, dung, 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 dung sort of thing. And then I just suddenly started thinking, my God, what a rhythm section featuring Ed Graham and Glenn Matlock. So one day I just asked him, I said, "Glenn, I've got this single that I quite fancy doing. Any chance you play bass on it?" And without even batting an eyelid, he said, "Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that for you." So it looks like this. Is that coming up okay?
Yep, that looks fine.
In fact, I've got the original painting behind me. Look, can you see that?
Oh, I thought that was one that you put in a frame up there.
No, it's actually a full-sized canvas painting. You know, everything I did with this single, I did it exactly how I wanted it to be. That's why it is. You know, it's a clear vinyl 7-inch single with, stuck to it, a download card. Because I do understand that not everyone's got a record player.
Mm-hmm.
And so the download card comes with lyrics and a biog and photos and an extra track. It's got the demo on it. And I've kept it off iTunes, kept it off Spotify, all that sort of stuff, because even if it fails because of what I'm doing, then I'd rather it failed because I did it from the heart. You know, and that's why I spoke to people like yourself about it, and I wanted to get it in front of people who'd really enjoy it, rather than, you know, pulling a few strings that I could go on sort of big radio stations like, you know, Radio 1 or try and, you know, get on that sort of stuff. Because I think people will buy it just because it's a collector's item. There are only 500 worldwide, and I'm not going to repress it if it sells out. You know, I want it to be special, like again, without wanting to sound like someone's granddad, you know, like how it was for me when things would just sell out. You know, I mean, you know, I remember Ace Frehley was the hardest solo single to get, the blue one, you know, and it took me ages to get it, even as a sort of young guy. And I finally found one and completed my collection. And that's the sort of thing I want people to get from this. I want it to sell out so that then people just think, wow, that was special, I've got one. You know, and am I allowed to do a quick advert for where you can get it from?
Absolutely. I mean, please do, because I want people to have the same sort of reaction. Yeah, we're talking some Kiss here. We're talking some of David's new single here and some of his influences in the bands that you've worked with. But the whole idea is we're going to play some of these singles, and hopefully it's going to, you know, have a same reaction for them that it had for me. That
no pun intended.
No pun intended whatsoever, in that I like this, that it's caught my attention. It's a new music discovery. And at my age, I love discovering new music that I haven't heard, or, you know, finding an artist that then makes me dig into maybe something else that they've done. So please do let everyone know where they can find this.
Well, I mean, you know, I've done everything myself. PR, I haven't got a PR company on it. I haven't got a management company on it, because I've been part of the machine, as we like to call it, you know, the industry machine. And I really wanted to do this outside of it. So the only help I've got is the record company that's pressed it for me is called Plain Groovy, and that's because the guy that owns it is an airline pilot. But he had the same reaction to you. He was I was trying to find someone who'd put it out for me, and I met a friend of a friend who sent him an MP3 of Crashing Up, and within 10 minutes he was on the phone saying, I've just been jumping around my living room, you know, and he's older than me or you know, and I hope he doesn't watch this, but he is. So, you know, he had the same reaction. Again, excuse the pun, but I'm really pleased that is the sort of, that's what people are saying, is that it's just an energetic, kick-ass track. But down to where you can get it from. Again, I wanted to do it through. I wasn't going to do it through someone like Pinnacle or Shell Shock or any of these big distributors. They're decent distributors, but basically, if you want a copy, go to www.burningshed.com. And Burning Shed, I worked for them for 4 years in Norwich, and they deal with, even though they're in a town like Norwich and what have you, they deal with some pretty major artists such as Porcupine Tree, King Crimson, XTC, just loads of, you know, like that. Really, it's quite a decent distributor, but they happen to be in Norwich. I happen to work for them, so clearly that's who I wanted to do it through. And the other distributor that you can get it from is www.themerchdesk, as in merchandise, themerchdesk.com. And that's run by, you know, one woman. And again, she does sort of cottage industry for bands. They sell T-shirts and their albums through her. And again, she's someone who is a Nelly, bless her. She is a passionate lady who loves music, and the people at Burning Shed love what they do. And so that's why I didn't want to send it anywhere else. As I'm from Norwich, I really wanted to have it sold in a record shop. Now, obviously, this is no good for this podcast, but one record shop called Sound Clash in Norwich, you know, you can physically walk in there, look through the racks, it's on the wall, and you can actually purchase it as a single in a record shop. And that was the romance for it for me. But yeah, I really wanted it to be 7-inch clear, and I also right down to the fact that I wanted it to be glass clear, so you could actually see through it. And I don't know whether you can see there, my guitar, that is actually my Les Paul after a particularly bad gig in Liverpool. As you can see, it's splattered with my blood, but I just wanted to sort of, I wanted something that signified that I've bled for my art. And the thing is, I wanted everyone that was involved in it to have a slightly different role. Like Ed in the Darkness, he said that in the Darkness, they rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and they really sort of, honed it down and stuff. And this was just me saying, do you want to come and play on this? And the same with Glenn, no fanfare, no. I've kept mentioning his past to a very bare minimum when I've been doing radio interviews and press and what have you. I mean, they're always going to put it. But for me, I wanted it on there because I just thought he'd enjoy being with a different bunch of people, which I think he did. Because you think of the ages, Amy's 24, Amy's 24, Ed's 40, I'm just hit 50, and Glenn's just nudged 60. So it's I love the idea that it's lots of different people, and they all do different things. Amy is a cover model on various things. In fact, have I got it? Yeah, there you go. This is Amy in her sort of day job.
Oh, she's a gorgeous lass with a great voice.
She has got a pair of lungs on her, that's for sure. And but the thing is, she genuinely just loves rock and roll. She is, as you can see, she's there's a picture of her with a drumstick somewhere, but I can't find it. But there's another one. So, I mean, she is, but you should see her on stage. I mean, we've obviously not done gigs in this lineup, and that was another thing about the Venus reaction, is that I kept telling people it's a one-off single. It's our debut and farewell, which I thought was quite a romantic thing. And it is. I mean, me and Ed will probably do some music together. Me and Amy are definitely going to do some music together. And as far as I'm aware, I'm still the drummer in Glenn Matlock and the Philistines. So, I mean, if that pokes its head up again, Glenn will give me a shout and I'll go and sit on the drums for him. But no, there won't be another Venus Reaction single. There won't be a repress, and so I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little bit like a salesman, but I don't want anyone to miss out, because I, as a record collector, know what it feels like to think, I'll get that at some point, and then it's gone, and I want it to be gone. Do you know what I mean? I know it sounds a bit perverse, but I sort of love the idea that there was this band that wasn't a band, and they all came together just the once, and and they nailed this thing down.
And they made some glorious music, and then.
Yeah.
And then that was it. So
yeah, I mean, I hope people don't hate me for sounding sort of, I don't know, not big-headed and stuff, but I think it's two cracking tracks. And I would also like to say that when we're talking about the ages of things, in between touring, I'll give you this little story as well, because I think it's important. In between Tories,
in between Tories, good God, edit that out.
In between, yeah, too right, yeah, edit her out. In between touring and all the other stuff, there was a friend of mine asked me if I would be interested in helping out at a youth club for kids that were, traumatized by something that had happened to them, like some sort of bad thing. They had sort of sport there, and they had art and stuff like that, but they had a music room, but they didn't really have they didn't have any staff that really knew what they were doing with the music. They didn't know how to plug stuff in and what have you. So I said, yeah, I'll come in and have a look and what have you. And there was a few kids there wanted to learn a bit of a drum beat. And the way I did it wasn't proper teaching. It was like, what's your favourite band? What's the favourite song that you like? And then I'd teach them that song. And then one day there was this girl I was asked if I would see this girl called Chelsea Riley. And she was 15 at the time. And she had been, it's okay to talk about, she's cleared everything with me, and she's now a very, very confident lady, but she was bullied really badly at school, like to the, being beaten up and, terrified after school because she had coloured hair. She had coloured hair and she was different from other people. She couldn't talk to the other girls about Justin Bieber and all that sort of stuff because she wasn't into it. So they took a disliking to her, and I don't know whether it translated to America, but there was a terrible case in 2007 here with Sophie Lancaster, who was actually beaten to death for being a goth, and so I took Chelsea on. She was very nervous. She was very, very quiet and very, very sort of worried about herself, very unconfident. And she said she'd like to write her own song, which interested me straight away, rather than learning an instrument. She said she didn't write or play anything. So I said, okay. I said, I'm going to go and make a cup of tea. And I gave her some Post-it notes. Do you know what Post-it notes are in America? Do you have them?
Oh, we do. We live with them.
Yeah, and so I gave her a bunch of Post-it notes and a pen, and I said, well, you must be thinking something about what's happened to you. You must have thoughts in your head. I'm going to go and make a cup of tea, and when I come back, I'd like you to have written some thoughts down on pieces of paper. And when I got home, when I got back to the room, there was this table that was just covered in Post-it notes. And I immediately saw the phrase crashing up. And I said, what's crashing up mean? She said, well, it's not burning out. I'm not going to burn out. I'm going to crash up. I'm going to get over this, you know. And like I say, she was very timid, had her hood up and what have you and all this. So gradually she came out and she wrote lines like, you know, beauty doesn't come with a kiss. And I mean, that, what I like about what she wrote the full set of lyrics, and she wrote what I call universal lyrics. Because if you listen to them, they're just about getting over a bad time and really like kicking ass instead of going under. I mean, she did try, but unfortunately, when you've got a gang of people beating the shit out of you, it's, you know, there's not a lot you can do about it. But lyrically, I think she wrote a set of universal lyrics. Clowns hiding behind people just means, you know, people that you put your trust in, sometimes you suddenly find out that they're not who they said they were. And I thought it was pretty insightful for a 15-year-old girl to come out with this, and particularly like the way that we clicked, and like I was well into my 40s by this point, you know, and but that shows what music is, isn't it? Doesn't that show that music basically transcends everything? Yeah. And so if you do decide to buy the single, one of the extras on the download is me and Chelsea's demo, where I'm playing all the instruments and she's singing. And so that's pretty good. And Chelsea's got a decent voice on her now, but she didn't have at the time of recording, so that's why I didn't choose her to sing on the thing. And I asked her, would you be okay with me doing this? But I just think, for me, it's got a little bit of extra gravitas, because this girl was in a terrible place, and now she isn't. And although she was supposed to do an interview with a newspaper yesterday, and she's gone down with chronic tonsillitis to the point where she can't speak. So any KissFAQers out there, you'll find her on the Facebook page and you'll see her and stuff. Send her some love. Poor girl. She can talk for England, and yet she can't actually utter a word at the moment because she's got tonsillitis. But she's a very brave girl, and she inspired me to come up with the sort of oomph of the track that we did, you know. Well, so I just wanted to put that forward. So, you know, ages wise, you got a 15-year-old, 24-year-old, etc., right up to Glenn, just, you know, nudging over 60, and together we made a bit of a special thing. And I hope I haven't bored too many Kiss fans of talking about my own thing, but you know, there's clips on the Facebook page. You'll find videos, and there's lots of clips of Crashing Up, clips of Lifetime and stuff, so you can have another listen to bits of it and what have you, and see how we recorded it and all that. So thanks for giving me the time to just explain about the single, because it's not just another release. It's not a debut with a band trying to get somewhere. It's not a career boost. We're all doing okay. Glenn doesn't need my help. Ed doesn't need my help, and Amy doesn't need my help. And it was mixed. Again, I wanted to do everything properly. It was mixed by Jim Lowe, who is a friend of mine, but he's also a Grammy-nominated producer and mix engineer. He's done everything. He's done 4 #1 albums for the Stereophonics, as well as stuff like Taylor Swift and Iron Maiden. And then I took it to be mastered by John Davis, because John Davis did the Led Zeppelin remasters with Jimmy Page and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, one of the reasons it probably sounds so good in your headphones, Julian, is, you know, I didn't just record it and then quickly finish it. You know, it was done, and even down to the cover painting. Like I say, this cover painting is a real painting, and it's a Norwich guy called Simon Pritchard. I wanted it all to be proper stuff. I wasn't going to give anything to anyone. That's why I don't want PR people over it and stuff like that. And Simon Pritchard is an amazing painter. And one day, when I've got some extra cash, I'm going to commission a Kiss painting from him, because I think what he's done for us. I don't know whether you can really see the sort of likenesses and stuff, but when you see what the real people look like, you know, he's pretty spot on, you know, and I love his paintings, and his paintings were in a rehearsal room that I used to use, and so I just made a note that if I ever needed something, that's the guy I was going to have. So I hope people understand that the reason I'm rattling on so much and boring everyone to death is because every step of the way I tried to do this single right for music fans and, you know, record collectors and people who haven't got a record player that want to download it, and people who just want something that's a bit real. Do you know what I mean? It's not another cynical release, you know?
No, and that brings us into kind of a Kiss angle on this. That what you know, I've obviously said that it sounds very good as a single, and it reminded me of Paul's Live to Win album. But also, it's an anthem. It's a very positive piece of music, like we know from Kiss. Some of their best material is the anthems. They don't really necessarily have a direct message. You know, Tomorrow and Tonight, Rock and Roll All Night, etc., etc. Detroit Rock City, big and bombastic and vivid. Coming into kind of your history, you know, I want to put you on the spot and say, what is your favorite Kiss album? You came in Alive 2, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this week. What is that one album that when you need something to pick you up and you want to listen to Kiss is the one that you go to more often than not?
Well, I feel it's such a cliche to say it's Alive. It's Alive. You know, everyone
says
it.
Cliche.
Everyone says it. You know, it's a live one. But if you were to sort of, you know, ask me for a studio album, I think I'm a bit of a Dress to Kill man, really. And I think, you know, some people say about the production on it, and I get what they mean and stuff. But if you ever played it really loud,
well,
it makes a difference.
That changes everything. Usually,
it does. It makes a difference. I think, you know, when you've got it on in the background and you're I don't know, doing the dusting or whatever. You know, maybe it does feel a little bit, but if you give that some welly and a bit of EQ, it's that dirty rock and roll album, you know. But then again, you know, there's stuff on Psycho Circus I think's ace. You know, I don't know why people rag on Psycho Circus so much, apart from the fact that they lied to us, which is annoying. You know, that's the thing I'd say to Gene. Did I tell you in any of my messages that I missed meeting them all and having a free meet and greet and everything? A couple of months back.
No, how?
Oh God! Well, like I say, I do a bit. I'm a producer as well, and I produced this band called Dax and Roxanne from Switzerland, and I did their debut album. And their PR firm are the same PR firm for Kiss and Guns N' Roses, and like you know 100 other metal bands and what have you. And the guy that dealt with their PR, he said to me, he knew I was a Kiss fan, and he said, "Do you want to come along to the do you want a ticket for the Wembley thing? I can get you, you know, meet and greet." And the night before, he went to the Water Rats Club in London where the Dives were playing, and Paul was there, and basically this guy's job was to look after Gene and look after Paul, and he asked me if I fancied tagging along, and I couldn't do it because I was doing something else that couldn't be changed. And I just, honestly, I went through hell that night, just knowing. I mean, I've seen them, obviously, but that, I could have, oh, God. Yeah. So, yeah, let's not think about that, shall we? But, yes, that was that was a real missed out thing, because I'd love to have, you know, had a word with the, have a word with the chaps. It would have been nice, you know, but there you go. Maybe there'll be another time. You never know. Time's getting short with Kiss, I think, now.
Yeah, you know, or hear Gene listen to this single.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the one thing I'd say to Gene is like, you know, I love you, man, but the one thing I've always found a little bit sort of with Kiss, which is a little bit sort of heartbreaking, is when they sort of when they actually just lie to us. You know, when they say to us about Psycho Circus, it's the new album, it's the 4 members and stuff. And do they really think that drummers like me are that stupid that we can't hear it?
I was, apparently, because I didn't realize. I just don't have the ear to tell the difference, I guess, between Peter Criss and Kevin Valentine. But,
yeah,
you know, that was one of the things that bothered me for many years with Psycho Circus. And I was still living in Scotland when that album... I was back in America by then. So... that album, I hated it when I found out that they lied. Initially, I'm like, oh, this is a good album. This has got some good songs. You know, it's got the anthems. It's got this and that. And then you find out about the lie, and it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth to a certain extent. And you're like, oh, no, they lied to us. This is Kiss.
Yeah, and I mean, there's guitarists throughout America at the moment, and well, throughout the world, because this obviously goes out everywhere, screaming at the screen now about, you know, I think they'd agree with me. You can hear Ace Frehley. You can hear Ace Frehley a mile away. You know, it's. I think it's obvious on the Alive 2 cuts which ones he's on and which ones he's not. You know, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just my ears, but I mean, I caught it straight away. But I loved Into the Void. I thought that was a great track. And as songs, I do. I'm sorry, I do like We Are One. I think it's a decent song. But you know, and the song Psycho Circus is obviously a bit of a, you know, that's a cracker as well. But yeah, that's the only thing that Kiss disappointed me slightly, was that the sometimes they try and pull the wool over our eyes, and you know, I don't think they understand really how much we love the band. You know, that we do listen and we do take it all in, and so you know, when they do a switcheroo on a guitarist or something, there's a fair amount of us, I think, that spot it or hear it. You know.
What about the 1980s for you? You know, being in Britain, there was a resurgence in the early '83. You know, they come back out there and they did a good tour of the UK in '83. They came back. They started their tour in Brighton in '84. They didn't come back out for Animalize, but then they were out for Donington in '88. So there's a good chunk, and obviously, Crazy Nights was most successful in Britain, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective.
Yeah.
But what did you find about the band in the Unmasked era? Did you stick with them, or was it were you elsewhere musically?
No, it's. I'm afraid it's a yes and no question. In that, you know, if I were to show you my record collection and go through it and what have you, you would see that I continued to buy everything that came out. I continued. I voted with my wallet, which seems to be some sort of special phrase that's thrown around in Kiss podcasts at the moment. But I carried on buying the stuff. I carried on, you know, picking it up. But I can't say I particularly enjoyed the, for want of another cliche, you know, the hair metal years, as it were. And it got worse. It got worse, didn't it? I mean, Gene and the. Just the dressing up. I mean, I can't believe that he didn't stand in front of a mirror and just think, this doesn't look good. But it's not about the look; it's about the music. But even so, I've never been much of a sort of double-handed. I can do it. I mean, I can play Van Halen and do the hammer-on stuff and what have you, but very rarely do I whip it out of the bag. But I don't know. I just it didn't resonate. I was just delighted when they reformed. You know, when they reformed, I knew it was at least, like the set at least, was going to be really very strong on the originals. So although I hung on in there and I didn't desert them, and I carried on buying, I carried on picking up magazines and stuff, but there was always that sort of disappointment that it wasn't quite how it used to be, sort of thing. But they've got every right. Every band's got every right to do what they want. And if that's what they wanted to do, and that's the sort of thing they wanted to follow, then, you know, knock yourself out. And I think touring with Bon Jovi probably had a lot to do with it. I think they toured with Bon Jovi and they saw that Slippery When Wet was the biggest album Polygram had for years. Where
biggest album since Pyromania.
Yeah, and it's kind of like 10 million and stuff, and Polygram was struggling to get Kiss over the million mark, you know. I think Kiss just thought, well, we haven't got the makeup on anymore, so let's have a crack at some good old anthems. And things like Crazy Crazy Nights is a feel good song. It's good, you know. It's not too shabby, but Gene's lyrics went south. You know, I mean, seriously went south. You know, the classic log in the fireplace stuff and all that sort of malarkey. You know, it's just like, really, you couldn't do any. That was written on the back of a fag packet. Do you know what I mean? It's on the plane on the way back from some 12-hour red-eye flight or something, you know, and because he can do better than that, we know he can. And so I think when Paul was left to steer the ship on his own, I think he did his best, but I think he was working with what he'd got, and good on him. He kept it going so that it picked up again, because obviously, Revenge was a much better album, even though still, Unholy and all that sort of stuff it still doesn't float my boat as much as a loud playing of Ladies' Room or I Stole Your Love,
But nothing,
For me.
nothing
I do
ever
love it.
will. It's
I love it all. Don't get me wrong. I love it all. Carnival of Souls, the lot. But I'm not blind to the fact there's been ups and downs. But I mean, who hasn't gone up and down in 40 years? Madam. But you know what I mean. It's who hasn't had sort of career dips and moments where you just think, really, you're going to go with this, are you? So, and that's the brilliant thing about Kiss, is that there's been so many sort of different things. I mean, I remember sending you a message about the Elder book, saying how much I'd really enjoyed knowing all about it, because to me that was a fascinating album. It wasn't crap. It was fascinating. It wasn't what I particularly wanted to hear at the time. I was a young boy, having a family holiday in Guernsey, where I walked into a record shop and I saw this album, because I didn't read music papers. I wasn't savvy enough to pick up music papers when I was a young lad. I didn't really know that's where all the information came. So for me, Kiss albums just suddenly arrived. They suddenly popped up. And I remember looking in the window in the Channel Islands on holiday with my family, looking in this window and just seeing this brown door with a tiny little Kiss logo. On the top left-hand corner, and just thinking, oh my God, it's a new Kiss album, but there was no pictures of them on there and all this sort of stuff. And so for me, it was a real it was kind of a positive thing, and I was just fascinated. What on earth is this? What is this? And when I put it on, it was just, okay, all right, okay, this is weird. But I like it. I like it. I make no apologies. The Elder's all right by me.
The Elder's perfectly fine, as is Unmasked, and something else about Britain that I always enjoyed was we had singles. On Unmasked, you had two brilliant picture sleeves, Talk to Me and What Makes the World Go Round. And then on The Elder, obviously, we had, A World Without Heroes, which is one of my all-time favorite picture sleeves.
Mr. Blackwell on the back. On the back of it,
and it came as a 7-inch picture disc. And then on, Creatures of the Night, you've got The Killer with the movable tongue sleeve. I mean, so... In a country that never really bought into Kiss.
That was I Love It Loud with the tongue.
Yeah, it was. I think it was Killer in Holland.
Creatures of the Night was the one, because I love that, because I've got the 12-inch with the double groove.
Right, the etched autographs on the back of that one, right?
Yeah. And it's either Rock and Roll All Night Live or Creatures of the Night, depending on where you drop the needle. And. That's they just always fascinated me as a band, and I love the music. There's so many assets to them,
But how you ever found anything out if you weren't really, what was it, Record Mirror, NME, Sounds? So Britain had a very good rock press in the 70s. There's a ton of Kiss, and I've got clippings all over the place here from those magazines. Everyone thinks that Kerrang! Well, Kerrang! Didn't come around until 82. And then it was the primary source throughout the 80s. So, there was a vibrant press that was covering Kiss through the 70s, through the 80s, but yet they never really caught on until Crazy Nights.
I've got 3 of these, and they're just box files, and they're all full of Metal Hammer, Sounds magazines, all that sort of stuff, British stuff. I was one of these kids that would just take scissors to my magazines. I'm sure that if Mark Cicchini sees this, he'll be crying into his meatloaf. Yeah, he'll be. He's but I did cut up the magazines. I mean, if it was a special, then I'd keep the whole thing. But if it was just, I've got the tiny little bits that say they're playing Wembley on a certain date and what have you. I was really sort of keen. So I've got 3 box files absolutely full of Kiss clippings, and the full magazines I keep in a place over there where I keep them all stacked and stuff along with all the Kiss books, and what have you. And the only Kiss books I think I haven't got are well, obviously the Monster book. That's ridiculous. That was a jump the shark moment, if you ask me. No offense to Kiss or anything, but I
don't think anyone's going to disagree with that.
I mean, even the Vault has got a much more sort of gravitas to it than that. I think the Vault's a fine idea if you can afford it. I mean, I can't, so I won't be going to London to pick one up. But I don't begrudge anyone who's got the cash for one. If you got it, have it. You know, and if you're really, really well off, fine, have him round your house for 2 hours. You know. But the Monster book was too much for me, really. But I do love I do love the Kiss books. I think all the autobiographies are interesting, and
they're about what you expect from each of those characters. Hey, before we go any further on this, I do want to play the B-side to your single and talk a little bit more about that. This is. Like I said, the B-side to the Crashing Up single, and the title is Lifetime. And you know what? I think I'm kind of favoring this one a little bit at the moment.
Yeah, do you know what? A lot of people listen. I think if you actually had a copy of the single, you'll notice it's actually a double A side, and this is the AA side.
So Mr. I will be ordering a copy of this. So let's play a little bit of Lifetime for everyone to hear. So that is some of the B-side, and you know what? I was a little nervous at the beginning of that with the keys being quite prominent.
Yeah,
but it dropped straight back down.
Keys. They are keys with a distortion on them.
they go right back down into the mix where they belong, to my taste.
Yeah.
And the guitars come through with a good crunch. And again, I said it when we were talking about the A1 side, whatever you want to call it, the first part of the A side. Again, very punk popish, very hook oriented. Again, there's this song I think has the edge for my personal taste because
for a lot of people too. It's weird. It's I've had a lot of messages saying that Lifetime means, and I think I don't want to sort of insult you in any way, Julian, but it's definitely the older people like Lifetime and the younger people. Honestly, when I get the sort of younger people sending messages, Crashing Up's the one for them.
Right, we were talking earlier when I was saying about the guitar sound in the Pistols' Pretty Vacant. There's a nice crunch coming through on your guitar on that song in particular. That it's a sound that I just happen to like. So it's like hook in mouth right here.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, Lifetime is I didn't co-write that one with Chelsea. It's just written by me, and it is like the opening line. Where were you when I was gorgeous? It's just like, because I'm sure we all think the same. And it's like, when I was 20, I was really good. I looked really good when I was 20 and into my 30s and stuff. And there was a point in time where I had a girlfriend that was 10 years younger than me. And I remember looking at her one day, looking fantastic. And I just thought, where were you when I could match you? And that sort of started me thinking about just the fact that time does run out, and the chorus about waited a lifetime to be somebody. It didn't mean like be famous or anything like that, or be it just we all hope that we're going to turn into a person that we're proud of, that we're proud to be the person we are, and I do try, but, we all fail and we succeed and we fail and we succeed. And whereas Crashing Up is Chelsea's sort of, right, fuck you, I'm going to get through this type sort of thing. Mine's very much a bit more sort of melancholic type, sort of looking back on things, but also thinking, I mean, at the age I am now, there's absolutely no possible way that I'm going to live as long as I have already. I'm past the halfway mark, for absolutely, definitely, for sure. And so you've just got to make it count. And so it is a positive song, but it's again, the last line of the chorus is, "I've refused to turn the lights out on myself because something's happening to me," and that's because there's always something else. There's something new. There's always something new to head towards. So it's a positive, miserable song.
yeah, which takes you straight back to the early 80s. And the music that comes out of the original punk movement of The Clash, Buzzcocks, obviously the Pistols, Sham, kind of transforms into what was called the positive punk movement, wasn't it? Yeah. And that's where I'm kind of coming from. You have the Southern Death Cult, which jumps out again, some of the messages, some of the kind of imagery. I was immediately thinking, are you a bit old to be writing a song like that? Because that's a very youthful song. That's a very, again, the hope. Yeah, I don't get the melancholy. I get the regret, but I also get the hopefulness that that it's not. We didn't go into the Smiths territory, or maybe a little bit. And I know you've had a little bit of interaction on the Cure side of things, but we don't go into that realm.
Well, I think that does have something to do with it, because when I was 14, I met Lol Tolhurst from the Cure, and we became sort of, for want of a better phrase, pen pals, I suppose, because he was always on tour and stuff. But I used to go and sort of, when I got a bit older, I'd sort of meet up with him in London. We sort of just became mates, really. And there was a period of time where I would go and visit, and if somebody was missing at rehearsal, I would stand in. And so, I have actually played, a few sets through with various members of the Cure, but never everyone at the same time. It was a weird period of time for them, as there was always somebody missing, But luckily, because I played multiple instruments, sometimes I'd get on the drums and sometimes something else. But I was never, obviously, I must make it clear, I was never a member, and never, I was never an actual sort of official anything. I was just a friend of Lowell's, really, But watching them at work and watching a really very famous band acted like normal bands made me realise that it was doable, because we'd go to the rehearsals and then we'd just go down the pub afterwards, everyone, and then go for a curry or something, and just normal stuff, and that's what I've loved about my sort of life as a musician, is that I always say to people that it's a champagne lifestyle on a lemonade income, and it is, because honestly, if you play like festivals to sort of thousands of people or whatever, you get treated like some sort of lord. The only thing they don't do is carry you onto the stage. You know what I mean? I remember a festival in the Czech Republic where we had a caravan each, like a mobile home each, as a dressing room, and full of food and all that sort of stuff, and and that sort of thing. But then you get back home and you realise that you've paid the mortgage and bills for about a couple of months, but you need to get on with something else now, and I still live in a fairly, modest house in Norwich. I love it because it's mine, but it's not, I'm certainly not sort of, bathing in sort of, ass's milk, and I'm not having sort of my reviews read to me by scarlet-lipped maidens while I lounge about on my sofa. That's not the case. I'm just. No,
but you're making music, and
exactly
in some ways, and obviously, if you watch our show, you know that Marcus Almighty is doing the same sort of thing that you're doing right now. That you've put a band together and put a single out, and that's what we're talking about. And we talk about Mark's music nearly every episode, and his adventure of bringing it to the masses. I played him these singles, both sides, last night, to throw them by another musician,
Yeah.
whose opinion, I respect as well. And he had a very positive reaction to them as well, which,
Oh,
I almost should have had him on the show to talk music, but I was kind of afraid he might start
well,
talking shop.
I'm
And
glad about that. I'm glad about that because he's a bit more of a metaler, isn't he? He's a real sort of,
oh no, no, he's more proggy. I mean, you mentioned King Crimson earlier, and
yeah.
he does a Yes podcast. He talks King Crimson.
Yeah, yeah.
He's very technical on the production side, and yes, he's done some heavier stuff
Yeah.
without a doubt. But judging from where his new album is at, musically, again, a very kind of hook oriented melodic,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
want of the better term, just similar in essence to what you're doing, where yours is hook poppy. I don't want to say poppy. That just has kind
Yeah, I
of
mean,
it's like
it's not
the
like
wrong.
it's
It's
like
like Bieber, and it's not. It's not.
it's like
It's not overly happy or syrupy.
no, it's like heavy cheap trick or something, isn't it? It's more that sort of thing. I think it's definitely. I want it to be catchy, and I want it to be sort of, I want it to be stuck in people's heads. But I also want an enormous guitar sound and the drums to sound massive. And I think that's the good thing about me producing it and being sort of, the captain of the ship, if you like, on this one. Because I knew what I wanted it to be like, and I have to say it's come out exactly how I wanted it to be. Which is great because when you're doing stuff for other people, there's always, a little something. I mean, I think, again, in one of our exchanges, I was saying last year I was playing on an album that was produced by Tony Visconti, which is obviously Bowie's producer, or Mark Bolan's, or Thin Lizzy's, depending on what your standpoint is. But I remember sitting in the booth with my headphones on, with my guitar around my neck, and asking Tony for like directions. How do you want me to play this, and what have you? And you get that lovely, soft American voice of his. Okay, Dave. Okay, I want you to do sort of like John Lennon rhythm guitar, Dave. John Lennon rhythm guitar, he's brilliant at instructions, because I knew what he meant was just this, for this rhythm track. That's John Lennon rhythm guitar. What a brilliant instruction! And like I was saying to someone quite recently that I never take it for granted. I'm always excited, and I'm always wide out about this. And I'm sure Marcus is the same. When he got his vinyls for his album, I bet he just had a real excitable shake to him. He's because whenever I get to do something that's really cool like that, whether it's Tony Visconti or whatever it is, and like you said about you pick up your guitar and play Pretty Vacant. How do you think it feels for me when I'm playing some festival somewhere and we're halfway through Pretty Vacant? I'm on the drums, I'll grant you, but I've had a couple of times where I've suddenly realised that the bloke who wrote it is 3 feet in front of me. And that's not to sort of, idolise Glenn or anything. I mean, we've been friends for like 15 years now, so he's I think of him normally as a normal bloke, but he did write 10 of those 12 tracks on that album, co-write them, and Pretty Vacant is all his, actually, lyrics as well. I don't know whether you knew that, but he did. That's a song he pretty much took to the band, finished,
Well,
and
there's two Pistol songs that are my two, and Pretty Vacant and Bodies. Those are my,
yeah.
those are my. I can never hear those too much. I want to segue a little bit, and we're talking about the power of a single. And in my
Yeah.
musical life, there's a single that ties into what you were just talking about, and you might know what it is just when I hold it up.
Oh yes, very nice.
Back in Liverpool, this came out of Liverpool in
Yeah.
87 December,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was out there, and I had just started getting into punk and
Yeah.
kind of discovering the Pistols, and I was going through record stores, and if ever packaging did not help a single, then this helped me discover a whole different side of
Yeah.
what emerged out of kind of punk, and that is,
Yeah.
of course, the Rich Kids
Yeah.
debut single, which to me really kind of validated that you could be punk without being aggressive, rude, Pistols,
Yeah, yeah.
but you could have power pop hooks, which is what ties in nicely to your single. Again, very, very similar. That they're powerful music. It's edgy, it's hooky, and exquisitely crafted. So that
Yeah.
was my real introduction to Glenn, more than the Pistols, which obviously I
And I
knew
do,
all the writing was, he was on the credits. But to see
yeah,
him working with Midge and who else was
yeah,
in the band? Steve New, I think, and can't
yeah.
remember the other ones. Egan.
Yeah, Rusty Egan, and Steve New. Yeah, and I have to say that I was so excited about when they did the reunion. I said to Glenn, "Do you want me to crew it?" So I was I was the guitar tech and drum tech, and because unfortunately the first Rich Kids reunion was really a fundraiser to raise money for Steve New because he had cancer at the time,
Right,
and
yeah.
he's no longer with us, sadly. But and also I think it was a chance for Steve to just go out with his mates one last time as well, and he played amazingly considering how unwell he was. But I just offered my services, straight away, and I said, "You want?" But again, to stand at the side of the stage and watch that, it was amazing. And like I said, I don't want to keep taking. Well, for a start, there's my access all areas pass in there. Wouldn't be much good without that. But on the front, it's signed by the entire band.
Oh my goodness.
But on the back, it's signed by all the supporting artists that were there. So it's signed by Viv Albertine, Maggie Ronson, Mick Jones. Yeah, I mean, it just Tony James from Generation X. It goes on and on and on. Tracy Hunter, Ian Hunter's daughter, and it just basically that copy is signed by everyone who was there that night, and it was like a who's who. So, but if you're into the Rich Kids, just to sort of segue and stuff, obviously you know that the album cover throughout the world looks like this.
That's right.
Right.
And that album, for anyone who doesn't know, that album is the only album that the Rich Kids put out. It's Ghosts of Princes and Towers. Has been reissued by Cherry whatever records.
Cherry Red.
With all the bonus track, all the B-sides that are on the singles. And there were 3 singles and 3 B-sides, which are just brilliant to have all in one package.
And I have to say, like I say, in a way, I hope Glenn doesn't see this because he'll think, "Oh, Dave, shut up." But I've always thought that Ghosts of Princes and Towers is the number one that never was. It's a sensational song, Ghosts of Princes and Towers. The track itself.
It's very good. I'm a little bit more partial to some of the other stuff on the album, but it's very, it's an underrated album. It just got lost,
Absolutely.
Completely
and
lost.
I've still done quite a lot of work with Midge since, with Ultravox and stuff like that. But anyway, what I was saying was that's the cover that and what have you. Have you ever seen the one-off different one from Sweden?
No, that I love to see.
This is very rare indeed.
Oh wow, band shot. Okay.
Yeah. And Glenn did tell me what castle it was at. It's at some sort of castle, and I've forgotten, unfortunately. So I can't give you the full skinny on that. But no, he did tell me that he did tell me where that was. And the thing is, I did a writing. I did a track with Rusty Egan last year, as well. So I mean, I feel very, very privileged. Whether it's working with people like Glenn or I was in a band. I was in a band called Atlantic Machine 3 years ago, which was Jim Lowe from who's the producer for the Stereophonics, who mixed my single, and he got me to play drums on his little project that he had, and we did a festival somewhere. And at this point, I'd already started to get to know Earl Slick, Earl Slick, the guitar player, and again, it's one of those moments where we were halfway through this encore where Earl Slick had decided to come on and just join us for the last song, and it's like when I watched the video of that back, which I must put on YouTube because it's my camera, it's my girlfriend filmed it, so I mean I can put it on YouTube. But I just suddenly thought I got halfway through the track and suddenly thought that guy was John Lennon's last guitarist. That's amazing. He was in his hotel room when Lennon got shot, and he was all the Bowie stuff from not all the Bowie stuff, but from Diamond Dogs right up to the very last album, he'd been in and out of Bowie's bands and stuff. And yet, he's just a decent guy. He's a very rock and roll guy. He's one of the coolest, older blokes you'll ever meet. And comes with very few airs and graces. He's a good guy, but I never tire of those moments where I just, like I say, don't think for a minute, just because I'm it's very difficult sometimes when you're telling stories to not sound like you're name dropping all the time. But I've been really lucky, you know, and so all I'm doing is telling stories, and I've got to tell you who they're about. So, you know.
I want to touch on a couple of the bands that you have worked on or worked with. Let's start with the Sex Pistols experience. You know, that was
Oh, God.
you in the role of Steve Jones, I believe.
I was. It was amazing. It took me around the world 4 times.
And
It's incredible.
you came to the U.S. with that act, didn't you? And you played
3 times, yeah.
you played for what, upwards of 20,000 fans.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on, the Pistols haven't toured in a few years, so and who knows if they ever will again. But you know, tell us about that and how you came to be involved in essentially a Sex Pistols tribute act.
Well, it's just one of those things where you just there's a side of people, there's a side of a lot of people that really think that tribute bands are the least cool thing in the world and stuff. So I'm always just sort of wary of saying, but this band were amazing. I mean, if you look at any of the footage of them after 2006, because when I first joined, they had a different singer, bless him. But the guy that they got 6 months, 9 months after I joined, a guy called Nathan, is just it's weird. I mean, Keith Levine from Public Image Limited did some gigs with us, and he did some guest spots with us, you know, where we got him on, and it freaked him out. It really freaked him out because this guy is totally on it. And like you say, I mean, what can I tell you? It took me around the world 4 times. Like, we did massive gigs in Brazil, and I think it's, and I think it's. I remember, I think that was one of my moments where I remember sitting on Copacabana Beach on the white sand beach one afternoon when we were playing Rio, and we either had a day off or it was the afternoon before the gig. But I just remember sitting there, looking out at the sea with the big Jesus fella behind me and what have you. And I had this moment where I just thought to myself, I'm actually getting paid for this, you know, and it was great. And we did, what I liked about it was we would try and play all the places that we could that the Pistols played. So we did play the 100 Club a lot, and but when we came to America, we obviously Winterland, as you know, is an apartment building now. But we did play, not Tulsa. What's the? I know one that we did, which I'll tell you about in a minute because it was brilliant. What was the first one we did? Oh, there's one off the American tour that I can't remember which one it is. But we did play. We did do Longhorn Ballroom in Dallas.
Did you? Holy shit!
Yeah. And the great thing is, the guy that owned it in '78 is this guy that owns it now. And he was telling us about that night, and obviously some of the audience were coming up to us afterwards and saying, you know, we were here first time round. And I think the best compliment the band got, because I left in 2010, but they're still going. They're still going. And if you get a chance to see the Sex Pistols experience, I mean, the guitarist they've got, I think, is probably physically a bit of a better Steve Jones than me. He's a bit chunkier. And so he's got that. I always looked like a bit of a greased whippet in leather trousers and a string vest with a hanky on my head. But they're still going and they're still amazing. But the best compliment I got was from a guy called John Taberry. Now, Pistols fans will know exactly who he is. He was also known as Boogie, and he was their sound man. He was their sound man for the American tour, and before then too as well. Dave Goodman was the original sound man, but John Taberry was that guy, and he was also in charge of trying to look after Sid and stop him running off and all this sort of stuff. So, and he came to see us, and he took me aside at the end of it, and he said that was like being in a time machine, you know. And there was a lady there. Called Sue, who used to be called Sue Catwoman, and she's in all the punk photographs and all that sort of stuff. She was actually in tears because it was in the 100 Club, you see, and it was with the lights down, and us playing, and you know, you're behind a bunch of people. It was too much for her, you know. It just took her back so far, but for the sound man to say that I'd nailed the guitar sound, I was well happy with that. So, although tribute bands aren't the coolest thing in the world, maybe, the thing is, when you get a really good one, when you get a real good one like the Sex Pistols experience, who are still doing very well throughout Europe and in this country, I don't think they've been back to America for a while, certainly not since I left. But I'd still, they're worth the ticket price, honestly. If you just want to, if you just want to just go and try and just see what it felt like, or hear what it felt like, see what it felt like. And like I say, the singer Nathan is, it used to freak me out even, and he also he got asked to do something with Jar Wobble. Him and Keith Levine and Jar Wobble did a little thing, and Jar Wobble from Pill. And I think Keith sold it to Jar Wobble by saying, "No, you've got to see this guy. You've got to see this bloke," And I think it's just because Nathan's basically a good actor. He's got the voice perfect, but he's also a very good actor, and he used to study the Winterland gigs and what have you. And the funny thing is that I'd already met Glenn by this point. I'd done a bit of guitar for Glenn in a few rehearsals in 2002, and I joined the Pistols Experience in 2006. And whenever I'd meet Glenn, he'd say, "Are you still in that band, are you?" And I'd go, "Yeah, it's all right, it's going well." And I always got the idea that Glenn might be more interested in me doing some stuff with him. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I got it wrong. I don't know. But I often thought, and so when I decided that I'd had enough, that I'd done enough there, which was after 4 years of just continual touring and continual travel. I actually texted Glenn because Glenn had actually texted me and asked if I was going to go to Reading Festival or something, and I said, "Yeah, I am going. I'm going to be there." And I added, I said, "By the way, I've left the Pistols Experience," and I said, "I've done my best," sort of thing, and what have you. And it was really, really soon after that Glenn asked if I could help him with some of his stuff. So, maybe that was a right decision, because working with Glenn led to a lot of the Bowie stuff and led to a lot of the exciting things that I wouldn't have met Viv Albertine if it wasn't for Glenn. And I worked with her for 4 years from the Slits, and I wouldn't have met the Bowie bunch, and I wouldn't have done Iggy Fest, which was basically me, Andy Anderson from The Cure, Kevin Armstrong, who's Iggy's guitarist, doing the whole of the Blah 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 album, and I was on bass for a few numbers of that, with Erdal Kizilkay as well. He wrote Erdal Kizilkay is an amazing. I ended up in the Erdal Kizilkay band at one point, and he co-wrote with Bowie When the Wind Blows and tons of Buddha of Suburbia, stuff like that, and he's an amazing musician. So I mean, like I say, I'm still pretty wide-eyed about everything, but I can't. But when I think about it, when it comes out of my mouth and I say it, I think I actually did do that, didn't I? And thank God we've got YouTube and videos and stuff for me to actually prove it to myself, But I've got a lot to thank Glenn for, because a lot of things obviously led to other things once people had seen me drumming for the Philistines,
So you were on drums with the Philistines.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of the work that you've done with Glenn. Studio, just live. What does that work embody?
Well, you know what? One of the reasons why, there's loads of reasons, but another one of the reasons why I wanted Glenn on my single is that I joined the drummer before me was Javier Whaler from the Stereophonics, and basically the Stereophonics kept, quite rightly, kept nicking him, kept pinching him, or and there were various bits and pieces he couldn't do, and there was a tour of Canada, which I can't remember why he couldn't do the tour of Canada. I don't think it was the Phonics that time. I think it was something else. But Glenn said, "Could you do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." And when we came back from Canada, I think Javier did a couple of gigs and then just decided that having to balance the Stereophonics with the Philistines was too much, and I became the drummer, as it were, and I mean we just carried on through that. Sorry, what was your original question? I forgot. I've gone off on a tangent there.
And you're asking me to remember. I'm asking more about working with Glenn in the studio.
Oh, the studio. Sorry, the studio. That's it. So
what have you done with him, basically, in the Philistine side of things?
Yeah, basically, sorry. What I was getting to was the fact that Canadian tour was the Born Running tour, and the album Born Running had just come out, and it just saddened me that in all these years, 6 years since then, we never went in the studio and recorded something after that, because it was a brand new album, and the stuff that Glenn's done in the studio since then, whether it's been with Zach Starkey or whether it's been with Earl Slick and Slim Jim Phantom, or whether it's been Glenn's solo stuff and what have you, we've never gone in as we just didn't. I didn't get to play on anything that's on record, and so another reason why I wanted Glenn on my single was the fact that even though I wasn't drumming and him playing rhythm guitar, which is what it was. That was the dynamic in the Philistines. It was me on guitar, him on bass, and Ed on drums, and with Amy at the front, and that was good enough for me. But yeah, I have to say one of my sort of sadness is that because the Philistines are actually a favourite band of mine, before I joined, and to this day, I love Glenn's solo stuff and Philistines albums, and like the On Something album. Anyone wants to check out a Glenn Matlock solo album, I would say, or so Glenn Matlock and the Philistines, I'd go for On Something, which is it's a fantastic record. And but no, we never did. We've still to this day, I've not gone in the studio with Glenn except for recording this single. And it was just gigging basically throughout Europe. We did a lot in Europe, Poland, Norway, Sweden, and plenty of British things and stuff. And it was all very stop-start because Glenn. One of the great things about Glenn is he's always doing something different. I mean, let's not forget, he got pinched by the Faces to be the bassist in the Faces for the reunion, and he's the obvious choice because maybe punk rockers don't realise that his bands that he loved were the Faces, the Small Faces, and the Who, and as well as sort of songwritery people and stuff. I mean, that's what Glenn is. He's a songwriter, I think, and an amazing sort of finger bass player.
I mean, if people don't know Glenn's Matlock and where he's coming from musically, one of the first rock autobiographies I ever owned, I think it was the first, was I Was a Teenage Sex Pistol. Still have the hardcover.
I can see mine from here.
Yeah. I don't have the dust jacket for mine anymore, but it's just it's the original first printing. And that really tells you where he comes from musically, and that's where I gained a lot more kind of respect for the bands, be it Glenn Matlock or later from on the American side, the Ramones, who were very well versed in the R&B side. It opened up new doors for me musically. I mean, obviously, I flashed the single, and that got me looking into the Small Faces, which full circle come around to Glenn on the reunion, of the Faces. It makes sense in a bigger picture, and some of the things that Johnny said about Glenn, pop and all that, but Glenn was very well versed on that side of music and being able to hold down a band, whereas Sidney couldn't hold the bass the right way around. That was image over substance versus substance over possibly image being the big difference there. So,
I mean, Sid managed to do the sort of root note playing, the ding 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 ding. He had that down, but until the drugs came along, and that's when you look at that Winterland gig, that's a guy off his face. And that's why it sounds so horrendous. But if you listen to the early, I've been told by people who knew him, like Viv Albertine, shared a flat with him for a long time. I've met a lot of people that knew Sid, and apparently when he first joined the band, he tried really hard. He was trying really hard.
He tried. There's no doubt about that, and it's not to denigrate him. Obviously, he's grown greater than maybe he ought to in terms of where he was coming from musically, but in terms of where he was as an icon or a poster boy for the movement, he's much greater than he was. And that Winterland gig, I mean, regardless of it being a bloody train wreck, it's a wonderful train wreck. I can watch it endlessly, and the sound check's been put up on YouTube, and I was clicking like on that because it's just an incredible moment in music history.
It's a band falling to bits, isn't it?
Yeah, live and in Technicolor. So
but the thing is with Glenn is, like, if you listen to the Glenn version, the demo sort of No Feelings, for instance, where Glenn's doing all these brilliant runs and all this sort of stuff, and then you hear the version on Nevermind the Bollocks, which is obviously done by Steve Jones.
It's all Steve.
And he was just matching the chords with the root notes, I mean, he did a fantastic job. I mean, obviously Glenn's still on Anarchy on Nevermind the Bollocks, and Glenn's on the B-sides of the singles and stuff, but I believe I know the rest is all Steve Jones. So Sid wasn't on Nevermind the Bollocks at all. And they've released in the box set, actually, they've released where they did try and get Sid to do a few things, and I think there's a version of Bodies and a version of God Save the Queen, I think, where it is Sid on bass. and you know, you can hear it.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that, you know,
It's Chris
Sydney
Thomas.
versus Steve versus Glenn. There's a big
Yeah,
difference in those bass lines.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, Glenn's just got a great sort of groove to his playing, but he's really it's a aggressive groove, really. I mean, you know, I don't know how he'd describe his style. You know, he probably wouldn't want to. But I just think he's one of my favourite bass players, which is, again, it's what to be honest, I've had a couple of people sort of raise an eyebrow and say, "Well, Dave, this is an all-star single, except you." and But that's not what it was about. That's not what it's about. It's not about Amy being on the cover of magazines. It's not about Glenn being in the Pistols or Ed being in the Darkness. And you know, Ed's got his 5 times platinum award on the wall, and you know, he lives about a minute from where we are now, from my house. But you know, he's got his MTV awards, he's got 3 Brit awards, and all that sort of stuff. None of that, I promise, with my hand on my heart, none of that was important to me when I put this single together. You know, I knew it probably helped shift a few, maybe, but I didn't care really. You know, I didn't care whether, you know, whether that was why people would buy it. I wanted it to be good. You know, I wanted it to be good, and for that, I wanted my favourite drummer, because I think Ed, even though me and Ed have been friends and so, I remember going to see the Darkness at one of their early gigs and just thinking, this is amazing. This is great fun, brilliant riffs, and Justin's hysterical, but he's really good, and you know. They were just a fantastic band, and I remember just thinking, wow. And when Ed came to see me play with Glenn in Brixton, he came to a gig in Brixton of mine, and it's the first time he'd seen me, you know, with Glenn. And afterwards, Ed came up to me and he went, "You're much better than me. You're a much better drummer than me." And it's not true. We're different. You know, Ed is way more solid and tasteful than me. I might be able to do a few more fancy fills, you know, but Ed Graham's drumming style is just like being punched against a wall, and you know, you add Ed Glenn's bass playing into that equation. So, you know, I hope people don't think to themselves, "Oh, well, you've just crowbarred some of your famous mates onto here," because I could have done that in a much bigger way. Really, I'm sure if I'd have sort of, you know, pushed a few people that are, you know, sort of, I don't know. I mean, I suppose they're famous enough, but I mean, that, like I say, it really wasn't about that. It was creating. You know how Kiss always used to say we wanted we wanted to be the band that we never got to see on stage. Mm-hmm. In the studio, I wanted to create a band that couldn't possibly happen, because there's no way we can play live, not with our schedules or schedules. I can't remember which one the American is, but schedule, but it's one of those. But with our diaries, you know, they're never going to coincide. You know. But I'll always, you know, I'll always play drums for Glenn if he needs me. I'm doing I will do some more stuff with Amy, and me and Ed are, you know, like I say, we live around the corner from each other, and we've been friends for a long time. So I'm sure I'll sort of lend guitar or bass or whatever to Ed if he needs me and stuff. But the Venus Reaction is a debut farewell single. It's it won't happen again, and the clear vinyl version and stuff, it will be gone. And like I say, it's not a hard sell. Don't buy it if you don't want it. But you know, it's just like don't be upset if it's gone. So you know, get on to I'll do it again, www.burningshed.com or www.themerchdesk.com if you want one. If you want one. And like I say, it's a 7-inch single, but it has got a download card. There's photographs and there's a biog and there's lyrics to both singles, and there's both the tracks obviously on MP3, good quality MP3 as well, mastered by John Davis, and also you get me and Chelsea's version, which I had to have it remastered, because obviously we never thought at the time me and Chelsea were recording it that we were actually going to release it, you know, to the public. So it's pretty rough, but it's good, you know. It's still it's still got the bite of it, but it is you know, it's that girl singing her song. And it's me playing drums, bass, and guitar, you know.
So I've got 2 more questions before we wrap up here. And
Julie, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, well, you know, it's getting, what is it, 1 a.m. for you. So
yeah, it's early.
Obviously, there's a final question that I always ask Kiss-related folk, and that is the flavor of Kool-Aid that you drink. Who is that one person in the band who you kind of say, that's my guy, that guy represents Kiss, or that guy represents the musicality that I appreciate the most in Kiss? Who is your guy and why?
It's ace. It's ace. But all of them, I mean, all of them have, their merit. Paul Stanley, I just think is an amazing front man, and when it comes to his solo album and stuff, I think that it doesn't get any better than Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, So I think songwriting wise, he's absolutely spot on. But there's something about that laid back, dirty Les Paul. The way Ace used to just stumble around the stage, and still hitting everything on, and that was the one for me. I just thought, that guy's the cool one. But I love Peter Criss because I could play, like I say, when I was a young drummer, I could play Peter Criss stuff. His fills were good, but they weren't out of my reach. Gene, when I was younger, Gene was great because he was the demon and he was just sort of, but I hadn't discovered bass playing really then, so that wasn't a thing. But and Gene in recent times, again, like I say, oh God, you have to be so careful with Kiss fans, don't you? But he's. Do you know what? I'll tell you, there's a similarity. I think I've said this before. There is a similarity between Gene and Johnny Rotten. In that I've been in a room with Johnny Rotten countless times, and I've never fancied going over to say hello because I just know he can just, depending on what side of the bed he got out of, he'll take your head off or he'll be really nice to you and stuff. And Gene has become a little bit like that sort of weird uncle that comes to a family gathering and you're really pleased he came and you tolerate him because he was nice to you when you were young, but if you'd really rather he didn't speak and say anything. But I mean, the man's a genius. They all are. I mean, they, collectively and individually, they've got all their strengths and stuff. And Gene, I have a great respect for and stuff. But some of the stuff that comes out of his mouth, I just cringe, and I just think, just stop talking now. You're ahead. Yeah. Stop it.
Just now's the time to unroll the tongue and shut up. So.
Yeah, because he is cool. He is cool. I know he lost his way in the 80s, but I personally love Runaway and Dead or Alive. I thought they're great films.
Oh, they're complete rubbish. I haven't watched them since the 80s. So, you've already told me your favorite album, which obviously I think is a bit of a cop out with Alive, but I say it myself. I'm going to put you on the spot. One song. This is your Desert Island single, and you're not allowed a B-side. One song, one Kiss song that you're allowed to take with you to the island.
I think it would be I Stole Your Love.
Just really?
Because I love the opening to it, the riff when it comes in. I just love the way it hammers along, and just. But it could be because of the first few songs I ever heard when that neighbour of mine played me Alive 2. I Stole Your Love was one of them. Am I right in thinking it's on side one?
Yeah. I lose track. We did the show on Alive 2 today, and how they switched up the set list in the middle of the Love Gun tour. So I have no bloody clue at this point. But I totally get where you're coming from. I mean, my first songs that I ever heard when I moved to America in '78 were Deuce and Black Diamond, and to this day, Deuce is my one song that if I don't hear that live, or if I go anywhere, that is the one I'm taking with me. Even though it's not necessarily my favorite Kiss song, it's that it's so imprinted on my personal Kiss experience that I could totally understand if your first experience was Kiss Alive 2.
Yeah,
and it's a good song. It's absolutely cracker.
And I think, am I right in thinking that on where is it? Where have I put it? Yeah, I remember on side 4 of this Kiss Takes Tokyo. When you put the needle on I Stole Your Love, because it's a bootleg, you just get these and the bombs on it, the explosions on it and stuff, and I just think that opening riff is just amazing. But I mean, to be honest, with a band that's got such a massive back catalogue as they have, I mean, that's a bit cruel to say what's your favourite Kiss song, because they also. Do you not sort of change your favourite song from time to time?
Never.
No, never. It's always Juice, is it? Yeah.
It's always Deuce, and
Yeah.
if you ask me Def Leppard, I'll say the same song. If you ask me the Pistols, I'll say the same song. All my Judas Priest, always the same songs for those bands. My favorite albums may change because that's a little bit easier to move around.
Yeah.
Last question, and that actually it's a two-parter. Glenn didn't play on the B side of your single, did he? Or did he?
No, he didn't. No, I right up till quite late. It was me. I left myself on there, and then when I handed it over to be mixed by Jim, because Jim Lowe, not only is the the phonics producer and all that sort of, but he was the bass player in Glenn Matlock and the Philistines, and I liked the way Jim played. He played like me with a plectrum, or pick, as you say, and. But we're really good. We were really good friends, and that's another thing about this single is I wanted it to be just chock full of friends, people I care about, and I feel that way about Jim. And I just said to Jim, "Would you do the bass? Would you redo the bass?" And initially he was a bit sort of, yeah, but why do you want me to do that? I said, well, because I'd like you to play on it. I'd like you to play on it. And I must say, with my headphones on, listening to it intently. Yes, it's very similar to the bass line I put out, but there's the odd little touch that is just Jim, and I'm really glad. I'm really glad that I got him to play on it, and I'm glad it's a 4-piece band on each track. So that's the answer to that one. That's why I asked Jim to do it, was because we're good mates. I like his style, and it's no one would have noticed if I'd have left my bass on there. But to me, like I say, it was a thing that's done from the heart, and I wanted my mate on it on the other side.
It makes it fun, and obviously I complimented your production at the top here, and I really don't go through the credits before doing that. I gave you a totally honest evaluation of just what I got out of the single.
Yeah.
Production wise, where do you want to be going? I mean, is that an area that you'd like to do more of, moving into the production realm? And
definitely.
And if so, what sort of bands would you be interested in working with? Where's your wheelhouse, so to speak?
Well, I'm still. I think one of the things that keeps you sort of a bit, younger of head, that's younger of mind, more than anything else, is to just keep dipping into stuff that stretches you, and then you can go into your sort of comfort zone as well. And the first thing I produced was a girl called Sasha Luffman, who was 16 and a brand new artist sort of thing. And I went into the studio with her and did a 4-track EP. And what I loved about that was that obviously she knew that I was the guy with the experience and all that sort of stuff, and she didn't know how to sort of work anything and all that sort of thing. But when we were recording, I loved the fact that she would stop me occasionally when I was doing guitars or whatever and say, Dave, that sounds a bit 90s, and I'd realised she's absolutely right. I was using like a chorus pedal and a delay and stuff, and I was being lazy, and I wasn't, and she pulled me up on things. So Sasha was great, and like I said, I produced the debut album by Dax and Roxanne. That's DAXX and Roxanne with only one N. They're from Switzerland, and we got some 9 out of 10s for the album, for the review, for the reviews and stuff. It was amazing, and that was my first production job on an album, a full album, taking a band that is like young 20-year-old guy, in their 20s, sorry, guys in their 20s, into the studio and doing that. And did you see the picture of Joe Elliott holding the sleeve next to his head? Yeah.
Bloody Joe, God.
That's fantastic because and they've got some amazing gigs coming up. They're supporting him at the Roundhouse, which is a massive venue in London and stuff, and
a legendary venue, isn't it?
So I think that my production on that, without patting myself too much on the back, because I really wasn't. I'll be quite honest that I wasn't sure when I went in. Can I produce these 4 lads, and will they listen to me, and all this sort of stuff, But it was a very successful thing, and next Thursday and Friday we're actually going back into the studio together, and I'll be producing another couple of tracks for them, because they're going to reissue the album as a deluxe edition, because that's what you do these days. You give your album a year and then release it again with a couple of extra tracks. But it's great. I mean, and the sleeve was done by the guy that did the Nightmare on Elm Street posters. and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, if you like Def Leppard and you like classic rock, then Dax and Roxanne are good to check out. And if anyone out there needs a producer, then I guess I can do that for you. But I do like it. I also did a film soundtrack. I've done 2 film soundtracks for independent productions. Nothing that's gonna blow your socks off with. It wasn't Fast and Furious 10 or whatever. It was little things. But I loved doing that as well. I loved the fact that they would send me time-coded footage and tell me what was going on and what the story was. And I've got a studio upstairs, and I like the solitude of basically just looking at the visuals and how am I going to fit this. And sometimes it's strings, sometimes it's it's different. I mean, that's across the board with the stuff that I do. I mean, I mentioned the Tony Visconti thing, and that was doing an album for a lady called Daphne Guinness. And Daphne Guinness has done 1 album already, and the new one comes out in March. But I've co-written and played guitar on a track there. And I remember I got sent some footage of Tony Visconti recording the 22-piece orchestra on it. It's just amazing, because when me and Daphne and Malcolm, who was the other co-writer, when we were actually writing it, it was just the 3 of us chaotic. I just had a guitar and Daphne was just singing, and we sent a demo at the end of the night. It was about 2:00 in the morning. We just winged it over to Tony via email, and in the morning when we got to the studio, he just said, I really like that song. I really like that song you sent over. And I think we should do it for the album. It wasn't done for that. We weren't trying to make one for the album. We were just having fun. We just did it. But it ended up with a 22-piece orchestra on it. And when I went back to the studio to see how everything was going on, there was Andy Mackay from Roxy Music doing some saxophone on something.
Bloody hell.
And yeah, I know. Those were my words, slightly harder, but yeah, they were, and so I love music. But my 2 favourite bands, if you had to desert island it as well, are Kiss and the Sex Pistols. Those are the 2 that do it for me. But there's a lot of, obviously, working with a lot of Bowie's musicians. I've really, really got a new appreciation of Bowie. I always liked him, All
right, so what's your Bowie album? Pick your Bowie album right now.
Ooh, Low.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Or Scary Monsters.
Wow, that's I'm way deep in the mix stuff, so I'll go with Ziggy for mine.
Yeah.
Obviously the Def Leppard connection there, and all the stuff that they've done over the years, I guess, has pegged me back into that rather than Hunky Dory or anything that came on afterwards. But
yeah, I mean, but I mean, you say about the Ziggy thing is like, I mean, did you know that I was the original bass player in Holy Holy, Woody Woodmansey's band?
Jeez, Woody.
Yeah. So I was the bass player in that. It was myself, the aforementioned Malcolm that wrote with me and Daphne. Steve Norman from Spandau Ballet, and that's a weird friendship that I've had. I never thought I would be good friends with a member of Spandau Ballet, but he's a lovely bloke and an amazing musician, plays guitar like a demon, and percussion and everything. But yeah, that was one of those sort of all-star band things put together and stuff. But I remember it was the 3rd in a row of 3 gigs, the first 3 gigs we did. And I was very, very nervous at the job because Trevor Bolder had not long passed away. It hadn't been long. And I was doing the best on bass that I could, with that behind me. But have you heard Woody Woodmansey play? He's an old fella now, and he's an absolute dynamo at it. And afterwards, he came up to me afterwards and he went, just in his lovely Hull accent, he just went, Trevor would have thought that was all right.
Just a totally Dura accent and voice. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. That was all right, that was. And so, and then obviously I had to shift over from the bass position because Tony Visconti came on board to do the Man Who Sold the World album. The redoing it. They did the whole of it in its entirety. Whereas we were doing a little bit of everything from Woody's era. So we did a lot of Ziggy Stardust. And but I then got shifted over for like bits and pieces on rhythm guitar. So I got the electric out for Suffragette City at gigs, and I was on acoustic for, oh fuck, I can't remember what it was. I played 12 string on something, but now, I mean, again, Holy Holy, you know, they're gig. They are a true all-star band now. You know, I mean, eventually, I stepped out. It was a natural sort of thing. We're all still very, very good friends. And like I said, I'd worked with Tony last year, and Woody's always very pleased to see me. And I was his drum tech for a while after that, which was really nice as well. You know, I was just happy to be involved. You know, and that's the thing, Julian. It's like I say, I've dropped a lot of names, I know, but I can't help it because it's what I do. But yeah, I went from being the bass player to the rhythm guitarist on a, you know, and filling in a little bit. And then when it was decided that it should be a real proper all-star band with, you know, all the Bowie connections and all that sort of stuff, you know, I just said, well, I'll be a drum tech then, because why wouldn't you? You know, I've got to pay the mortgage somehow, and so a job's a job, and it's with people I absolutely love, you know, because
and you stay close to the music. I mean, come on, they're not gonna. You need a drum tech regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like with Glenn's band and stuff, I mean, I mentioned to you that our backing vocalists were Elizabeth Westwood, who was in Westworld in the sort of 80s, and I had pictures of her on my wall, and Viv Albertine, but which me and Viv have had a good laugh about. You know what the front cover of the Cut album looks like, don't you?
No, I don't actually.
It's the three members of the Slits naked, covered in mud, in loincloths.
Well,
and so yeah, we'll move on from that. But yeah, so but the backing vocalists in Glenn's band were Maggie Ronson, Mick Ronson's sister, Tracy Hunter, Ian Hunter's daughter, and Elizabeth Westwood from Westworld. And you know, and in Holy Holy we had Jessica, who is Tony Visconti's daughter, and it just a great vibe, you know. I mean, I'm a very lucky bloke. I really am a very lucky guy, really, when it comes to music. There's just been some absolute shining moments, and like I said in the song Lifetime, you know, I mean, there's you've always got to think that the next thing's, you know, the next thing, you never know what the next thing's going to be. So, you know, you've got to keep a happy face on it.
And of course, Glenn did perform at the Mick Ronson Memorial Concert, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
I know you weren't a part of that, but you know, that's a hell of a CD to pick up. Obviously, Def Leppard connections on there, Mick's on there. I think Roger Daltrey is on there.
Tracy Hunter's a really good friend of Joe Elliott's, and they did a single together. You know, there's a Tracy Hunter Joe Elliott single.
Did he? Because I know he did. What was it? Mick's last album, was it Heaven and Hell?
Yeah.
So
and who produced the Rich Kids album?
Jeez.
You just said it.
Yep.
Mick Ronson.
Yep.
Mick Ronson. Yeah.
So you know, music. What I love about having this sort of conversation is music. And how glorious it is. If you think about one of my all-time favorite albums, and then we'll lead out of here, it's Cybernauts, which obviously is Phil Collin, Joe Elliott, Woody, Trevor, and I always forget the last player on there, but you know, basically the best of Bowie, the best of Mick, you know, Angel Number 9, and some other really good stuff, Lou Reed. On there. Yeah. Just absolutely.
Oh, I've got to tell you this. I've got to tell you this story because it's just so funny. Because Glenn told me this story, and I think you'll appreciate it. You know, and I think it's okay for air. But basically, what it was that when Mick Ronson told him, it's a Mick Ronson story that basically when he was producing Transformer, you know, the Lou Reed album with Perfect Day and all that sort of stuff on it, which he did all the strings for and everything, I believe, you know. But basically, halfway through the day, Lou had gone out for a while, and this fella came in dressed as a lady, and one of the more interesting types in the world, and apparently he came in and he said, "Is Lou here?" And Mick said, "No, he's gone out. Sorry." And he said, "Oh, you know, I'll catch him later," sort of thing. And the guy left, you know. And Mick Ronson, obviously being from Hull, obviously he didn't have any prejudices or anything and stuff, but he wasn't quite down with it and stuff. So when Lou Reed came back, apparently Mick Ronson said, "Oh Lou, while you were out, one of them Transformers came in," and that's how the album got its name. It's Transformer. He meant transvestite, but he did,
brilliant.
That's one of them Transformers. So yeah. I love that story. Because it's so naive and lovely, isn't it? It's kind of it's quite sweet.
It's very down to earth. All right, let's bring this one to a close because we have gone on. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have,
and we didn't even get to talk public image. But there you go. That'll be another conversation. You did mention John Keith Levine. David Donley obviously has the Venus Reaction single out. We hope you've enjoyed the couple of samples that are out there. I will post the links to both of the websites for you. Again, very limited edition. This is, a KISS fan making music. And if you've, kind of gotten part of the conversation that we've had today about all these influences, all these things that come into music, and you like what David has made, I certainly recommend it. I'm not going to do a 2-hour show with someone if I don't recommend it. It really is, as my catchphrase is, as simple as that. I'm not going to waste time trying to push anything on anyone. I wanted to talk to you about music. I wanted to talk to you about being a KISS fan in England and having that experience that I kind of never got because when I lived there and when I lived in Scotland, it was just fun to talk with you today about music. So I very much appreciate you coming on the show and talking with us on kind of a side topic that we don't really get the opportunity to go into. So
it's been an absolute pleasure. I have to say, it's really, really nice. It's really good, and like I say, I've been watching the KissFAQ, since episode 1, and I think the whole sort of KISS community, and can we call it the KISS family? It kind of is, isn't it? Because
we have to be. We're all into the same band. We're in different places, different countries, different politics. None of it matters when you drop the needle and put on the music. All of that shit goes out the window.
Exactly. It's been an absolute pleasure, Julian. I hope we can do something like this again at some point. It'd be brilliant.
Well, David Donley, thank you very much for coming on the KissFAQ. Do pass on my appreciation of the music to all of the other players on the album. It's been a great fun playing the single and also talking with you about music. So for now, from David and myself, thank you for joining us on the KissFAQ podcast, and we will see you, I guess, wherever we see you. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final, there are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.